This video is an intro in Python unittest.mock library. It's about what are mocks, why we have to use mocks when we write Python tests, what problems mocks solve, and so on. And I want to begin with the creating of an ideal example of a testable function. Let's create a Python module. And I'm defining a new function add that will add a and b. That's it. It's a very simple and pure function. Its result depends on its inputs only, and there is no side effects. It has no dependencies, and it has a returning value. The add function is an ideal testable function. Let's write a simple test for it. New file, tests.py. I want to split my screen. Let's import the unit test library, unit test, and from the main module I want to import the add function. Then I have to create a test case for the add function, and it will have only one method. So the class test add, for example, and then I'm calling the assert equal method, self assert equal. It takes two arguments. The first argument is a call of the function I want to test. It's add, I'm calling it, for example. And this call will return a value, and that value should be 4. So then let's add the if main block, and the unit test has its own main function. That's it. And let's run the test. We can see that the test passed, and again it's a very simple example. That function has a returning value, it has no dependencies. And now I want to complicate my example. I'm renaming the name of the add function to the lenJoke function without arguments. Then here I want to call a getJoke function. It's just an example of a function that has a dependency. It depends on the work of the getJoke function. Actually, this function, lenJoke, should be refactored, and it should take a joke as an argument and just return its length. Nevertheless, let's imagine that we can't rewrite this function, but we have to test it. So let's define the getJoke function. getJoke. This function will make a request to the URL and get a joke about Chuck Norris. The URL will be http ichucknorrisdb.com jokes random. Let's make requests to this address. Response. I need the requests library. I'm calling the get method, and I'm passing the URL into the get method. So let's import the request library. It should be installed. Requests. To install it, use pip install requests. Okay. Then I want to check the status code of the response. We can use the awk property, response awk, but for the sake of this tutorial I want to use the status code. Status code. If status code is 200, if the server will respond successfully, we will get the 200 status code, and I want to get a joke. Response I'm calling the JSON method that will return a dictionary. I need the value key and I need the value of the joke key. Otherwise, else the joke will be no jokes. And let's return joke. I want to print the result of the getJoke function just to be sure that it's working. So print getJoke and let's run the code. Okay, we got the joke. And again, and again, and again. And each time I run the code, we get a different result. And it's an important detail. The question is how to test the landJoke function. The problem with it is that the landJoke function depends on the getJoke function that makes a call to the external API. But what if the server is down? What if my internet provider is down, or I have problems with my Wi-Fi or something like that? Okay, for example, we have no hardware problems, but each time we make a getJoke function call, we get a different result. And again, how can we test the landJoke function? And this is the simplest case where mocks will solve our problems. Mocks will help to isolate our landJoke that is under test from its dependency. We have to mock the getJoke function. So let's write the test for it. Let's import the patch function from the unittest.mock library. From unittest.mock import patch. From main import landJoke. And then I want to rename the test case. It'll be testJoke, for example. Test landJoke. And now I want to use the patch function, it's a decorator, to patch the landJoke function. The patch function takes as an argument a string, it's a path to the objects I want to mock. I want to mock the getJoke function that is defined in the main py module. So the path will be main module and getJoke. The decorator patch creates a special fake object, a magic mock object, and passes the reference to it into the decorated function that is in the test landJoke method. Let's say it will be mock getJoke. It can be any name you want, it's just a parameter, a local variable of the test landJoke function. And now we got the mock getJoke variable. It's a completely controllable and customizable object that we can use to reproduce any interface we want. For example, in the landJoke function, we call the getJoke that returns a string. So let's replicate this behavior in our test. I need to use the mock getJoke variable. That refers to the magic mock object, which we got from the patch function. And it has the returning value. Return value. And I think that for the testing purposes, the one string should be enough. And then let's make our assertion as usual. Self assert equal. I'm calling the landJoke function, and the length of the string is 3. Let's run the test. And we can see that the test passed. Now I want to set prints in landJoke, function to show what happened. We can see our prints. The patch decorator substituted the call of the real getJoke function with the magic mock object. We set the return value of the fake getJoke function, and the return value is 1. And when we call the getJoke function in our testable landJoke, we got the 1 as the result of the getJoke. And the test passed. By using a mock, we eliminated the dependency of the landJoke function from the getJoke function for our test. And now our test became independent from a returning value of the getJoke function, because as you remember, the getJokes returns a different result with each call of it. Also, our test became independent from the state of the network or the remote API server. Okay, let's complicate our example a bit more. And now I want to test the getJoke function itself. It also has dependencies. The first dependency is the get method, the get function of the requests library. And also we need the status code and the JSON attributes of the response object that will be returned by the get function. The get function returns a response. It's the case when a mock returns another mock. So let's define a new test. Test getJoke. Let's import it. getJoke. And let's decorate the test with the patch function. Right now I have to mock the requests library. I want the requests to be imported from the namespace of the main module. So the path will be main requests. As you remember, all imported names are getting to the global namespace of a module. So the requests library, after import in the main PY, is in the namespace of the module main PY, and so this will work. More about namespaces and scopes you can watch in my Python tutorial, by the way. So, and I have to pass into the test getJoke function a new argument. Let's say it'll be mock requests, for example. The first external dependency we use in the getJoke function is the call of the get method. Let's mock the get method. Mock requests get. The get attribute is a function, so I need its return value attribute. Return value. Okay, but the get function of the request library returns an instance of the response class. So we have to mock a response object too. So let's say that the get function, this get attribute, will return a mock response object. Mock response is just a name of the variable. Now let's define it. Mock response. It'll be an instance of the magic mock class. Magic mock. Let's import it. And now we have to define the status code and JSON attributes. So mock response status code will be 200. The JSON attribute is a method that parses a JSON object and returns a Python dictionary. So return value will be dictionary value. The dictionary has the value key. Its value is another dictionary, and the joke key will have the hello world value. Okay, and the assertion, assert equal. I am calling the get joke function, and the result of the joke, the returning result, should be hello world. Let's run the tests py, and we can see that the test is passed, for example. Let's run the test again. This time we can see that assertion error, hello world not equal to hello world. Yep. Now I want to test the else clause that will be executed if the status code will be more than 300. For example, page not found 404, or forbidden access 403, or internal server error 504, and so on. So let's copy this test let's rename it test fail get joke. Okay, by the way, we can set the attribute of a magic mock object when we create the object just by passing into the constructor needed arguments. For example, just copy it here. Status code will be 403, for example, because I need to fail this. And instead of the hello world, I have to get no jokes. Let's run the test. And the test passed. For example, let's say that there is the hello world as a assertion. And we can see that assertion error, no jokes, not equal to hello world. So the test works. Actually, it's great. Our tests became independent from the state of the network, from a remote server, from various results generated by an API. And that's the power of Python mocks. And I think that it's enough for introducing into Python mocks and how to use unittest.mock library to write tests in Python. So if you like the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.